Good evening. Welcome to the Welcoming Our New Neighbors panel discussion. My name is Eric Giordano, and I am the Executive Director of the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service, also known as WIPS, and we are a unit of the University of Wisconsin system. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the sponsors of this series: the Ethiopian Community Development Council, ECDC, Wisconsin Humanities, Wisconsin Public Radio, and the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point at Wausau. Thanks to each of them for their generous sponsorship of this program. Before I introduce our moderator for this evening, I'd like to share a brief video, or we would like to share a brief video, which will kind of set the stage for our discussion tonight. It'll be about a 4-minute video, so we'll go ahead and start that.
A refugee is a survivor.
La parte más difícil fue que aguantamos hambre.
جزای اول ما قتل بود.
Cómo matan a la gente sin piedad.
در به در از طالبا هر لحظه تهدید میکنه میپاله. تلاشی خانه به خانه در شب روز شروع شده بود.
از لحاظ روحی و فکری خود ما بسیار حالت پریشان داشتیم.
باید یک انتخاب میکردیم که بالاخره کریمه هم رای خود گفت که می ادامه میتم حالا که مرا به قتل برسانم کدام مشکل نیست.
عین همشیرایم، عین خانوادیم، اونام دم دود طالبا میسوزه. اون مرا رنج میده زیاد.
Compañeros míos que amanecían muertos en baños, ahorcados.
Yo no extraño nada de Nicaragua.
مرا در داخلم بایک کالایتان پود کنین، کشک بایکم کش کنین، مرا ببرین.
و ما فقط در فکر جان خود بودیم.
که میگفتم ما کجا خواد رفتیم، زندگی ما چی خواد شد، فامیلم چی خواد شد. که یک خانم امریکایی آمد.
En el fondo de mi alma yo sentía, ¿qué voy a hacer? ¿Para dónde voy a ir?
میدان هوایی ترمینال که دیدیم تیم اسپانسر ما آمده بود. اونجا امرای حتی تفلکایشان گرفته آمده. با خود کلان چارتای کلان نوشته کردن که فامیل به یقی خوش آمدیم به وسا.
خیلی خوشحال شدم. بخی گریه گرفت مرا. اون روز اصلا یادم نمیره، تا زنده ام یادم است. خیلی خوشحال بودم.
یعنی ما یک جسد بودم که فقط امی جسد تیار جور شده بودم که هیچ چیز برای امید برای زندگی کردن نداشتم که اینا دوباره بر من زندگی بخشیدن اول خودم.
Hay gente de buenos corazones. Ya tenemos otra vida.
The atmosphere of love they have surrounded me with, they are healing this person from trauma.
به ما نشان دادن که از کل چیز که در انسانیت مرتبه و مقامش بسیار بالاست.
سرزمین آمدیم که کاملا مثل موری افراد اشخاص متضرری که از جنگ نفرین شده خسته هست، اینا در آغوش خود گرفتن، رویه دادن.
When I was driven into the city, it was love at first sight.
و هر کسی که از این پرسان میکنه مثلا قصد داریم که مثلا از واسا برین و میگم نخیر، چون که خیلی عالیه.
You have changed my life by hosting me here. I'm so grateful for accepting me, for making it possible for me to start all over again. I present my gratitude. May God bless you. May God bless the people of America. May God bless America.
So we'd like to thank Laura Hunt and Jordan Innes for producing that wonderful video, and also to the Humanities, Wisconsin Humanities for funding it, and to the families and individuals who participated. Full-length versions of each of the family stories that you saw will be screened as part of this series in February and March. Information as to the exact days and times will be on the WIP's Facebook page and will be sent to those on the WIP's email list. If you would like to join that list, please email us at info@wips.org or info@wipps.org. I'd like to introduce you next to our moderator for this discussion, who will in turn introduce our panelists. Shereen Siewert hosts the award-winning regional program Route 51 on Wisconsin Public Radio. She's also the founder and publisher of the Wausau Pilot and Review, an independent 501c3 nonprofit newsroom devoted to educating the public about crucial issues in central Wisconsin, with a special focus on public policy and quality of life issues. Shereen, we're very grateful for you joining us tonight and moderating our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eric, and thank you to all of you who are here tonight. It's my pleasure to be here. Before we begin our discussion, I would like to take a moment to introduce our panelists for this evening who have been kind enough to join us. Eric Yankee is currently the Community Engagement Manager with the Ethiopian Community Development Council. This is also known as ECDC. It's the Refugee Resettlement Agency based in Wausau. Before taking on this role, he was the co-sponsorship coordinator with the organization, where he was responsible for facilitating the creation and training of groups that sponsor new arrivals. Eric, thank you for being here. Emmanuel Tiaga is a new neighbor from Burundi. He arrived here via a refugee camp. Since September, he has called Wausau home, and we are delighted that you're here. Thank you. We have another Eric on stage today. Eric Anderson is a retired Wausau physician. He and his wife, Margaret, have been involved with sponsor teams for several new arrivals to central Wisconsin for more than a year. He has worn many different hats over the last year, and in addition to helping coordinate some medical care, he's acted as a plumber and a handyman and a shuttle driver. He has learned halal butchering of goats and sheep and turkeys, and learned to drink a lot of tea as well. Welcome, Eric. Francisco Guerrero is a certified health navigator through the Wisconsin Institute for Public Policy and Service. In this capacity, he has worked with many recent immigrants from all backgrounds and helped them obtain health insurance and navigate the U.S. health system. Welcome. And finally, Nasiah Her is on the board of directors of New Beginnings for Refugees. That is a nonprofit established just over a year ago to help new arrivals meet their material needs. She is also the director of client services for the Hmong American Center. Thank you so much for joining us. Thanks to all of you for being here and sharing your expertise and experiences with us tonight. As we mentioned, this event is being interpreted into multiple languages, and for this reason, our panelists and I are going to make an effort to speak slowly and take occasional pauses to make that easier for our interpreters. Over the course of the next hour or so, we'll be hearing about the experiences our new arrivals have had as they have been welcomed into central Wisconsin communities, including hearing directly about Emmanuel's personal journey and his firsthand account of his experience. For those of you working as facilitators, I'm curious what drew you to this work. What attracted you to be in a position to help in this effort? And I'd like to ask each of you to share just a little bit more about your role in the experience. Eric Yankee, we'll start with you.
Good evening, everybody. Hope you can hear me okay. I'm getting used to the mic. What drew me to this work is I was on the faculty at UWSP for 30 years as an historian, German history. And over that time, I also was involved in a lot of international education and helped get our peace studies minor going. I've had a lifelong interest, particularly in social justice issues, and I started teaching human rights coursework at the university when I was sort of my last stages of my teaching. And between the human rights education that I was learning and then sharing with my students, and also when I was taking students on educational tours about the Holocaust, I became more and more interested in the issues of displaced people and the work of what was happening in the world today to help folks who are displaced or in a refugee status. Retired from the university, I really wanted to work in this field. Didn't think it was going to happen close to my home. I didn't think we'd have this opportunity here. And thanks to the work of the local communities, of the folks in New Beginnings, Mayor Rosenberg and the like, they were able to help court ACDC and ECDC to come here, and as a result, an opportunity opened. And so that's what got me here. And I'm just super excited to have the opportunity to work on this here.
And Eric Anderson, what about you? What drew you to this work?
One of our, both for my wife and I, the spark that got us interested is one of the people who was instrumental in bringing this whole program to light in Wausau is Rebecca Voss, a minister at First United Methodist Church. She, through her involvement and vision, got this talk going, and we decided, that's something we could get involved in. And we were just talking about it today, and decided that, we live in a world where we all have a lot of opinions, and we feel very free to share our opinions, and everybody does, but they're all based on such a narrow slice of life. And broadening our expanse to people's coming from different worlds has been a great opportunity to expand our focus and hopefully inform our opinions better.
And Francisco, talk about what brought you to this work.
So, Health Navigator, my journey started when I moved here to the US. I'm from Chile in South America. And when I moved here to the US, one of the first things that I was told was that I needed to find a job that provide health insurance. And that was like, oh, okay, what is the meaning of all that? And then I started working in the healthcare system, and I was working with the Hispanic community, and I was asking, do you have health insurance? And no, I don't have health insurance. Like, what do you do then? And that kind of drove me to understand and realize that there is a huge need when it comes to resources for the Hispanic community. And I started learning more and more about how to navigate the system. And then I started working with WIPs and give me the opportunity to continue providing the assistance that our community needs, especially when it comes to navigate access to healthcare.
And Nasaya.
Let's see, can you guys hear me? Okay. What brought me to this line of work? Well, I was voluntold. Just kidding. On a more serious note, I appreciate the opportunity that was given to me, because originally Yiling Zhang, our executive director, was on board. But last summer, to kind of lighten up the load a little bit as far as work, I did show a little bit of interest because I myself have experienced the refugee let's see here, how can I say this? Although I was fairly young, I still remember living in a refugee camp and my exodus from Laos to America. And I felt like this would be a perfect segue to give back to our new neighbors and to be able to guide or provide some guidance in certain pitfalls that we've come through when we came back in the early 80s, and also help expand the knowledge of resources and ideas as far as how we could improve based on what we went through originally, especially our Hmong community that have gone through with minimal resources back then. And so this was one place that I felt that it was kind of like coming full circle for me.
Thank you. As we are talking about people who come here from different countries, we hear a lot of different terms. And I thought it would be helpful if we discussed what those different terms really mean. We hear documented and undocumented. We hear asylum seekers and refugees. Each has different nuances. So maybe we can talk about that a little bit. Francisco, let's start with you. What do those terms mean, and when should they be used?
Yes, so when you hear about immigrant that is documented, it means that he has a work permit, a residency, a visa, either as a refugee, asylum seeker, that allow them to stay in the country and being able to work. Undocumented immigrant is pretty much a person that moved to the United States without going through the process of obtaining a residency, a work permit, and is in the country without those permits. When it comes to refugee and asylum seekers, I'm gonna give the opportunity to Eric to answer some of these questions because they work in that area and they have the expertise.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, got the permission? Okay.
Don't wait.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's really important because all of these terms are politically charged, and there's an awful lot of debate about how we use the terms. And additionally, there is a tendency in some political debate and argument to try to push everybody into one, package and sort of see them as the other. And I think that's the real problem at the end of the day, is that we're too busy dividing and sort of separating people away. The United States is a place that has always been a place of refugees. It has always been a place of immigrants. We have a legal process, though. And so what we were talking a little bit about earlier is the refugee process is a legal process. The folks who come to us, who come through our office, they go through a pretty significant vetting system. It takes years for them actually to get through that process and to ultimately receive that visa, Priority 1 visa for most of them, to come to the United States. And when they do come, they are legal. They have work authorization. They pay taxes, okay, and they contribute right away. And so, refugee as a category, it's a pretty broad term. It can mean there are a lot of folks who are suffering from forced displacement from their homes. And so, when we think broadly about the term refugee, we are thinking about people who've been forced from their homes, and it can be because of civil war. It can be because of natural disaster. There can be various things that can really lead people, draw them away from their homes, and it can be due to persecution. So refugee has this meaning internationally. And then I think also what kind of confuses folks is asylum seeker. Asylum seeker is the broader term. It's the category of folks who come to a country, in our case, come to the United States, seeking asylum, okay? It's a broader term. And there's a legal process that folks have to go through. So when they come into the United States, however they arrive on U.S. soil, they can and most do go through a process of trying to seek that legal protections to be here because of what they've experienced. And so I think it's important for us when we're out in the community to make sure when we engage in conversations about what's happening that we be careful about our language and we try to sort out what it is that exactly is being asked of us. Are we talking about refugees? Are we talking about asylum seekers? Are we talking about the undocumented? These are all pretty thorny issues, but they're very important. And even when I was driving up, I was listening to a National Public Radio report talking about just how important it is for us to recognize that human mobility on the globe, human migration, has been with us a very long time, and it's only increasing, and it's a part of our everyday lives, so we should get used to these terms.
Thank you. I think for people who have spent their entire lives here, it's hard to imagine what it's like to be part of the process. It's hard to imagine what it's like for someone who is in one country in one moment and suddenly they're uprooted and they wind up here. So Emmanuel, I'm hoping that you can enlighten us a little bit. And I'd like you to share with us your story and take us through your journey. How did it all begin and how did you wind up in Wausau?
Yeah, I don't know because of I have never heard about Wausau before. When I was in camp, I have never heard about Wisconsin, but by the favor of God, I found myself here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has been a long time waiting to be. I have been accepted to become in the United States to come here, like 7 years ago. So I have been waiting there. So end of the time, God did it, and today I'm here. I'm one of residents of Wausau. So I'm lucky to be here. Yeah.
How did it feel, though? I mean, to be in this different place, so different from where you grew up, from what you've known. What did that feel like for you?
Yeah, of course, yes. It's like another world. Everything's different. Like weather is different. Before when we came, we did like several cultural orientation it was like a warning to us that where you are going is different. Like it's not like how you think. Someone told us like you can write your name by right hand, and try to write your name in left hand. So it was difficult to write my name in left hand. So someone told me that this is how it's gonna be. So you have to be ready where you are going. It's different. You have to wear a couple of like a jacket. Mm-hmm. You have to wear like a couple of pants. Mm-hmm. So in Africa, sometimes we don't know that. So I find out, and I see winter how it is. I believe what they were telling us. It's a real, yeah, it's a real new weather. No more wearing like a vest. In Africa, you usually wear a vest everywhere. But I see now what they told me that I have to learn how to write in my left hand. I can see it now. But it's easy. Now I'm getting used. It's my home now. I like to be here. Thank you.
It feels like you're home now?
Yeah, of course. I found nice people. I didn't know. I find nice people like Eric, good volunteers. We came like strangers, but we found family, we find friends. I'm free to move anywhere now. So I have heard that in America, you don't have to it's strange to walk like in midnight. But the work I do, I will ride my bike midnight, going to work like 3:30. So I'm free because of where I was back there. I was a refugee. I wasn't able to work. Yeah, I was like come out of camp. It was like you have to get a pass, and you don't allow to work. You have to get a pass out of refugee. You buy things outside of camp, and you come back inside. Now I'm free. I'm free. Yeah.
Wow. Eric, yes. Eric Yankee, as a communication or a community engagement coordinator, you work closely with the co-sponsorship teams and other volunteers to support the new arrivals. So take me through that process. What happens from start to finish?
So we have a couple of ways that we engage volunteers to work with our new neighbors. One of them is more short-term and the other is long-term. That's kind of the easy way to sort it out. On the one side, we're always looking for volunteers to help with, say, for example, we get in our database that Emmanuel is going to be coming to this place he's never heard of, Wausau, Wisconsin, in 2 weeks. It's our office's responsibility, and when we assure that case, when we assure that we can bring this person and that we can take care of them, that we find an apartment, that we stock that apartment with furniture, stock the pantry, get it all set so that when they arrive, they have a place with furniture and food and clothing that's appropriate for the season. And that's where we have really some wonderful volunteers. I see some of them here in the audience who really help with that setup. And so there's volunteers who do work like that, just kind of help us get the homes ready for the folks when they arrive. But there's also the long-term needs, and those are really the ones that we're really looking for more and more sort of volunteers to help with. And that's where co-sponsorship comes in. Co-sponsorship is where we try to put together a team of volunteers to help the incoming families really walk alongside of them for their first 9 months when they're living in the community. And as you can imagine, there's so many complicated things to navigate. There's getting your kids enrolled in school. And we all know how complicated just dealing with the emails are for school, right? And so enrollment in school, getting into the healthcare system, making sure that folks are all getting lined up with where they can get their necessary healthcare. Getting a telephone, getting the basics of understanding how to pay your utilities, lots of things to navigate. And that's where the co-sponsorship teams for that first year particularly have been phenomenally important, because they help on a day-to-day basis in ways that our office just can't do. We have case managers for all of our new neighbors. And they work very hard on getting them in Social Security and getting public benefits set up and all that kind of work, which can be pretty labor intensive itself. But to have people who can be there and be new neighbors to our newest neighbors can really help them and be something they can look to as a friendly face and be a friendly face of the community. That's what co-sponsorship is really all about. I can tell you it causes a great deal of anxiety for all the teams, because every team I've worked with in this last year, as they've been reaching the 9 months mark, they go, oh my word, there is no way that we feel that they're ready to be all on their own. And we try to reassure them and say they don't have to be on their own. They've still got you, that you're still the neighbor, and they still have us. We're still here. But our goal is to help them to become self-sufficient. Our goal is just to help them to be independent and to build their lives that way. So that's kind of a long answer, but those are the couple of volunteer opportunities that we're really looking to fill.
How quickly are they expected to be on their own and be self-sufficient?
Depends on who you ask. When refugees come through the standard process of reception and placement, the State Department is the first federal body that gets involved. And so for the first 30 to 90 days is considered reception and placement. And every office like ours receives a little bit of money in order to pay the bills and to help the family pay their first rent, get their utilities, that sort of thing. And so theoretically, when those 90 days are up, or anywhere in those 30 to 90 days, a person could be considered independent, and they are here legally. They are here with their own visa status, and they are adults, and they can make their own decisions. So independence is something that can come at any time. But as all of our co-sponsorship teams know, for the vast majority of the folks coming, navigating learning English, finding jobs, understanding how to get your telephone bill paid, those things take time and they take a bit of repetition. And so we put them, the yellow light's on. We have the agreement set up for 9 months, which is really in a lot of our minds kind of the minimum sort of stretch, with the understanding that that's kind of a formal relationship. But it's an ongoing, unfolding process. And so I guess independent self-sufficiency is in the eyes of the beholder. But one thing that I find myself talking to a lot of the teams about is letting go. That there are times when you, kind of like when you're learning to ride a bicycle, sometimes you got to fall down a few times till they get it figured out, and that's okay. And so it is a process, and I just can't tell you how thankful I am for all the volunteers who stay up late at night worrying about their new neighbors.
Nasiah, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the housing component, and how difficult is it to find affordable housing for our new neighbors, especially given the affordable housing crisis that we're seeing here and in communities all over the country?
Well, unfortunately, I don't deal directly with housing, but as far as being on the steering committee, we do talk about ways of finding affordable housing. We discuss, especially when we have a incoming family, we have an idea of how large the family is and what the needs are. Then we do have a few landlords on the list that may have some properties available, but then, sometimes it doesn't work the way we want it to work. So, especially during the winter market, it's a lot harder to find places that would meet our needs. And so it gets kind of tricky. We might have to put them in temporary housing for, maybe a week or two or something like that before we can get them into something that is a little bit more permanent. So I know Gwen is doing a great job at looking for, making sure that we have places for our incoming families. But, with the market as it is, it's a tough market out there.
Is there something that you think the community could do to help ease that crunch?
Just the way prices are right now, it's just difficult. And so I think, and plus, I think it's also season-wise, I'm pretty sure will be a little bit easier to find when it comes like spring, summer, and fall, because a lot of people tend to move during those times. And so, I think it's also the season that plays a part of it. So there's just, there's just a few different moving parts that makes it difficult at this moment.
Let's talk about jobs and the workforce. Francisco, how are our new neighbors joining the workforce? How are they finding jobs and assimilating that way?
So Wisconsin, especially here, central Wisconsin, is a rural area. Agriculture here is in the heart of Wisconsinites. So dairy farm is huge around here. So in the case of the Hispanic families, they usually have a family member that works on a farm, and then they kind of follow their step and they join the workforce. Also, you have to think that in central Wisconsin, you also have migrant workers that come to like Portage County, for example, and they're moving from state to state, working on the fields. They also join the construction companies. You probably can see around Wausau, a lot of companies that do drywall, for example, are from families that move to the area from Central America or South America. You also see like the meat packing companies that are requiring a lot of hard work, and the Hispanic families are joining those industries here. It's also important to kind of mention something that when we're like listening, like how the process for refugees is like supported by organizations like ACDC. Imagine that you don't have that support and you're moving to the area. In the case of the undocumented immigrant, they don't have that backbone that's going to support them finding a house or assisting them with the healthcare or helping understand how you can enroll your kids with school. So for that, we need like organization in central Wisconsin that can help provide those connections and those services, especially when you don't have access to those services. And it's great to hear that I'm part of one of those organizations. H2N kind of help provide that connection between the school, the county, the health system, so the undocumented immigrant can have access to those services. But they're eager to work. And the reason behind that is that sometimes you only have one family member here in the state, and then they have another family back in the country. So they have to maintain two homes. And by doing that, that means that they have to work hard, and it doesn't matter the kind of job that they will do, but they're very talented at it, and they're very hardworking, and you can see them also working in the restaurant industry. A lot of restaurants, if you look into who's cooking, more likely someone is Hispanic. So it's kind of fun to say that, but they joined the workforce very fast, and they kind of stayed in the work for a long time.
If I could add to that, our refugee population who are coming with work authorization, the good news for them is that Wausau, like many, many communities around the country, we have a labor shortage. And so our employers in town have been very interested and very helpful. And we have folks working in several manufacturing sectors, at the hospital, in other places. So there's a lot of jobs available. One of the challenges that we have in that is even though we have a public transit system in Wausau and a bus system, it doesn't always get them to where the jobs are. You know, West Industrial Park, there's a lot of jobs and a lot of need for employees, but the bus system doesn't go out there. My friend Emmanuel here rides his bike to work at 4 o'clock in the morning because he starts work at 5. So if you see him on the street at 4 a.m., give him some space. So there are a lot of logistic issues like that we're a very car dependent community, as most communities in America are. So that's the good news, bad news with the employment. The folks who have work authorization, we do have a lot of jobs available. Sometimes getting them there is a little bit challenging.
And Emmanuel, what was it like for you to try to find a job? And has it been, have you found success? You obviously have a job, you ride your bike to work. What about your friends and family? Have they been able to find work as well?
Yeah, finding job here, it's work of ECDC. They did it for me. Yeah, I'm not responsible to look for a job. They do find a job for me. And about my family, actually, I'm alone. I live alone, yeah. I'm alone. They find a job for me. Now I'm working. Since now I have authority to work. Since when I was born, I became a refugee when I was 6 years. Yeah, back in my story. So I have never worked. I have never have a right to work. So now today I have a right to work. By the way, it's my opportunity to thank United States for recognizing refugee, for recognizing children of refugee, that also they deserve education like other children. And refugees, they deserve other right like other people. We have been isolated, you know. It wasn't easy. When you are in the camp refugee, you don't think about tomorrow. You just live like you don't know where you are going. So I thank United States for the program for refugee, for recognizing us refugee that you are a human being also, you deserve a better life. Thank you.
Thank you. Francisco, talk a little bit about why it is beneficial to have an inclusive and diverse workforce. Why is that important in our community?
It's important because it brings a different point of view to the work that needs to be done. It brings experience from a different angle, and by having a diverse workforce, you are integrating different values that can help grow your business. You have to think that people coming from other cultures also want to adapt to the new culture, but at the same time, they want to bring the brightness that come with people's moving to the area. It facilitates that the work itself becomes something that people want to do, and by having that mixed workforce, you can find that the unity that can be created when you have diversity can also have a positive impact on a daily life of a workforce.
Nasiah, I want to ask you about the opportunities that are available to learn English. That must be a significant barrier for people who come here and don't understand the language. What are organizations doing to help that?
Sure. Within New Beginnings, we did see that there was a need for English And so we did find a teacher who was willing to teach, I believe it was 4 days out of the week, maybe 3 days. And we also provide childcare so that way the parents can come and learn English. Usually it's not as intense as North Central Technical College, but after they get their feet wet and they start to understand a little bit more, we were told that some of them were interested in going to NTC. However, a few of them had come back and say, no, we want the more one-on-one. So we are going to continue that one-on-one. The plan for ELL classes are still going to continue, and because of the close proximity of teachers and students, and with that, it seems like it's a little bit more comfortable versus in a big classroom atmosphere. So we. At some point, we do want them to expand and learn more because we can only do so many levels. But we'll see how things go, because I know that it is very important to learn English and not just our new friends. Even we have other community other community groups in this community who do benefit as well. But specifically for New Beginnings, we have that available for our new neighbors, so that way they may be able to be more productive and be more independent and self-sustaining.
Thank you. Eric Anderson, I know that you helped navigate healthcare for some of the refugees who came here. What were some of the challenges that they needed to overcome? And well, besides a broken chair.
Okay. So in the co-sponsorship initial groups, we sort of divided up categories of responsibility. And my wife and I, being in the medical field, decided, okay, we'll help people navigate into the healthcare system. And part of that, we worked with the Bridge Clinic in getting people initial health screenings, if they needed immunization updates, and then it's access to whatever healthcare services they need. Some were basic primary care. We've had some more complicated situations, even requiring subspecialty surgical intervention through Children's Hospital in Madison. And the medical community has been overwhelmingly welcoming to access of new folks. As refugees, they immediately have access to Badger Care. So they've got health insurance, which is huge. So they've got access to insurance. Now it's just a matter of navigating how they get there and what that means and who can we get them connected to. So we've facilitated some of that role, and have had, you can imagine the stress of moving across the world to a different part of the world. Sometimes that disrupts one's sense of well-being, and it is a very stressful thing. So some health issues have come up probably because it's a difficult transition. But I got to say that the health community has been very welcoming. Dental care is challenging. We've had some issues. It's tough for people on Badger Care to get access to dentistry. That's just reality. So we're working on that one.
And Francisco, you mentioned healthcare when you were talking about your own story and how important it was for you to get healthcare. Can you talk about that a little bit and how healthcare relates to the immigration experience, especially for people who are not here with the right documents and can't perhaps get the care?
Yeah, it's funny to say, but I always remember this. By a family member told me, you need to find a job that give you health insurance. And I was thinking, not a job that made me happy, huh? So something that actually give me health insurance. In my background, I come from Chile, and over there, health insurance wasn't an issue, was there. So I didn't have to worry about it. But when I moved here now, imagine this situation where you're moving to a country, but you are not fortunate enough to go through maybe the asylum seeker program or a refugee program, but you need to run away from your country. So now you do it the byway. So you cross the border. Now you are here, and now you need to see a doctor. But without health insurance, what do? Where do you go? And it's crucial to understand that if you don't have papers, you don't qualify for health insurance. You don't qualify for the Affordable Care Act. You don't qualify for Medicaid. And even if you are, for example, a DACA, a deferred action student, you don't qualify for health insurance either. You don't qualify for Medicaid or the Affordable Care Act. So now where do you go? So fortunate, you have FQAC clinic, like for example, Bridge Clinic, La Clínica, Partnership in the state, and they're all over the country. So if you are undocumented, that is one of the first places that you can go. Now in WASA, you have WASA Free Clinic that is also taking a lot of these patients. But if you don't know where to go, your first entry to a healthcare system is through the emergency room. And if you go through the emergency room, well, you follow protocol, and then you run all these tests, and you're only going because you have a heartburn. But you go to emergency because you feel you're dying. So then they run all these tests, and then the doctor comes back and say, you have a heartburn. But then the bill is like $10,000. And if you don't have health insurance, how are you gonna pay for that? So then understanding what are the options for like the undocumented is crucial. Unfortunately, like Wisconsin have like all this program that if you're undocumented, you can apply and you can find your primary care doctor, you can find your dentist, but there is not enough people that know how to navigate this process. And by having someone that can guide them, it's a lot easier than for the kids, for example, get their immunization. Working with the counties also help to provide some of those services. Because you have to remember, you're also maintaining a family in your home. So now, if you need to spend money between going to the doctor or maintaining your family back home, more likely you're maintaining the family back home. So working in health systems almost since I moved here kind of made me realize how everything works and how to navigate the insurance marketplace and how to find access to care. But at the same time, the community itself is moving, turn like open arms to this community. WASA Free Clinic is a great addition to the community because the application is simple, the way to enter and obtain primary care is simple, and all that happened because of the goodwill of the community.
Eric, Yankee, I wanted to ask you about some of the challenges involved in resettling in a smaller community. Obviously, we've talked about the transportation issue. There are fewer clinics. There are fewer opportunities in some ways. So what are some of the barriers, and how are you helping folks to get over that?
I'd like to start by saying we're super proud of the fact and honored that ECDC was willing to open a refugee resettlement agency. And we're a nonprofit, like the other, we're a branch, but willing to take that chance and move into a smaller community. The vast majority of refugee resettlement offices are in large cities for the reasons, Shereen, that you just mentioned. Both the capacities, in terms of things like public transportation, but even the size of enclaves of various nationalities. Those things are some of the benefits of living in the large cities. But on the downside, as we know, in the large cities, affordability, finding jobs that can actually pay for an apartment, they have their challenges, and some of the things that we see as challenges here are actually much larger in the big cities. So what we face in central Wisconsin is some of the challenges of public transportation. We are struggling in some places with getting the jobs lined up for some of our folks, though we've had good success. And I kind of want to give a shout out to Becky McElhaney, our jobs person in the office, because she works so hard to help everybody get jobs and to get them employed. And we've got a lot of our people employed, so we're doing really well. And so when I'm on national meetings with the folks who are doing community engagement and co-sponsorship at the other agencies, I kind of keep my mouth shut because we do struggle with transportation. We do struggle with housing. We do struggle with how we can get the ELL courses lined up. Our problems are kind of small compared to some of the struggles they're having in some of the larger cities doing this work. So I think one of the big things, though, that I'd like you to kind of take away from this conversation is that while these are struggles, there's two things that are important to keep in mind. All the things that we're mentioning are all the struggles of folks who are low income in our communities. Everybody who's low income is struggling with housing, jobs, transportation. And so I think as a community, we need to keep working on that. And I think that's where we need to turn back on our elected officials and work in our civic engagement to improve this situation for everybody. And so from our kind of privileged perch working with refugees, we see it. And our volunteers, a lot of whom have not had to navigate public benefits, are seeing how tough public benefits can be to navigate for people who are low income. So that's one thing I want people to take away is that this is our work, as a community. These are the things that we can do. And I can honestly say that I am so impressed with the folks who work in Marathon County, in Portage County, Wood County. When we interact with the folks in those, social services offices, they work so hard and they're doing a lot of good. We just need to keep building up our resources in that way. So that's kind of what's going on right now. The other part I'd like to underline with this is, I think like Francisco said, and sort of what you can see from hearing Emmanuel's story, the immigrants, the folks who are coming to live here from other parts of the globe, they bring an awful lot of energy, an incredible amount of ingenuity, a lot of hard work, and they're go-getters. And so, when we get these folks into our community and they help with the diversity in our communities, they help us see both the struggles we have. They also see some of the opportunities that we could really build towards in having a really culturally diverse, multicultural community.
Nasiah, I wanted to ask you about resources. How are organizations like yours matching the people who come here with the needs that they have, whether it's clothing or a bicycle or bedding or food? Do you rely on donations? How can people help?
Certainly. As far as kind of backtracking to our housing, before our family comes, we normally set up the houses and so forth, and the things that we receive to set it up are usually through donations. And our community has been wonderful at providing so much donation to the point where we had to close our donation doors for a little bit. But there are other resources, like for example, Goodwill has stepped up and say, hey, if you guys have a family or have a certain need, let us know, and put together a list of things that you need. So we've partnered up with like for example, Goodwill is one of them that we partner up with, and during the winter months, we've done hats and coat drives and etc. And the community has been so great and so wonderful in stepping up to that they've been pouring in with donations. Transportation is, again, a slight of a problem there, but we've had this bicycle program that people can donate their bikes. And we have a few people who donate their time to fix it up, to make sure that it's working and it's street ready and reliable. So that is one of the other options to maneuver our transportation issues. Now, grocery shopping was one of the other big thing. We tried doing a grocery run back at the beginning of summer, and it seemed like it was okay, but it just felt like there weren't enough room. More or less, it just was not flexible enough because each family has certain needs. And so our volunteers did step up in providing that type of transportation to grocery stores, because again, our bus line does not go out to Walmart or any other stores that might provide halal meats for our new neighbors, things like that, or out to the butcher shops, etc. So our volunteers have played a very, very big part in that. And so, as we've gotten calls from people who have estate sales, and at some point they're like, okay, we're done with our sale, but you know what? Before we start our sale, can you come and take a look as far as what you need? And so, so far I'm amazed at how much this community has stepped up as far as donating items to our donation center to make sure that our friends are taken care of. Food-wise, we have certain places that we can go now to obtain whatever meat that our family do need. We did work with a couple of organizations that provides vegetables that are culture appropriate. So I hope that we continue to be able to help serve our new neighbors and help them feel comfortable and grow with us.
Erica Anderson, I'm curious, you're a key person on the co-sponsorship team for one of the very first families to resettle here. What has it been like since then to become a neighbor and a friend to the people that you first welcomed here?
It really is, it's about building relationship. We talk about establishing community. Well, community is building relationships over time. I'm familiar with a book called 3 Cups of Tea. An American mountaineer by the name of Greg Mortensen wrote a best-selling book. Turned out he was discredited in some of the accuracy of his story, but the title came from a saying in the part of the world he was coming from in climbing in northern Pakistan, northern Afghanistan. And the saying is something like, the first time you have tea at a man's house, you're a stranger. The second time, you're an honored guest. The third time, you're family. And that really has been our experience, it's building relationships and becoming family with new folks, and all that entails. The nuts and bolts of living here, of figuring out how your washing machine works or how to get to here or there, getting your kids involved in all kinds of activities in school. And we've learned a lot over the last year. As the first sponsor team, we were sort of inventing it as we went, and the support network has certainly become more organized over that time, and more families have come on board. But it really is, in the long run, it's about building relationship with people and being available to them in whatever it is.
Emmanuel, is there anything that you would like other families to know? What advice would you give other families who are relocating here? What should they know?
We are here. We followed you here. We want you to take care for us because we followed you here. We are learning more from the neighbors, how they do. Like back in Africa, neighbors, we live like a family. You can go to your neighbor and you ask, my neighbor, can you help me sort? So that's what I want to see here in USA. So what I want to learn more about the culture, like learning, it's like another world. The way I will live back there, it's not how I can need to be here. I have to learn how you live here because of as a beginning a new life. I have to join you. You don't have to join me. I have to join you because if I followed you. So. Yeah, it has been so good for me because of I have been meeting new people, like good people, like a doctor here. I met him first time and he offered me a bike. So I didn't know him. He asked me, "Do you have a bike?" I said, "No, I come at my home." So I was honored. I said, "Oh, how good people!" So I didn't know that. There's good people like him. We still need more people like Eric Anderson. He has been doing so good for me. I didn't know. Sometime he called me to come to his home, have dinner together. So I've been honored. So I'm very thankful. Yeah.
Great. Francisco, you pointed out earlier that not everybody who comes here has assistance from agencies. So what can the community do as a whole to be an advocate, to help support the people who do not have that support net?
Inclusivity, have someone that can speak the language. It's extremely useful so they can access those resources. I'm part of H2N and WIPS, and we help provide that communication. So if the person needs help with the school, we help enroll the kids in school. If they need health insurance, as a health navigator, we're gonna find where do they fit, because in the case of Hispanic family, there is a mix. Some kids maybe are born here, some are born in their home country. Maybe dad has a work permit, but mom doesn't. So then you have to see, okay, this one fit in the marketplace, this one fit in Medicaid, or we can use an FQC for the kids. And then you kind of go around that. I think the community, we have to realize that they want to be part of the community. We all want to be part of the community. We all want to feel that we belong to WASA. I include myself. I've been here in, Marathon County for the last 14 years. And I want to be part of this culture. I want to understand how people in WASA in Marathon County live. And at the same time, I want to provide like some of my experiences that come from my own culture. And I think WASA is very fortunate because we have all this group of people that is coming to the area, and we're bringing like a lot of hard work. We are also bringing a lot of different food that you can also experiment. I mean, probably you have seen that in the last 5 years in WASA, we have a lot of Hispanic now restaurants that, so it kind of changed the taste of the kind of food that maybe you are used to. And if the community is willing to engage with all this new population that is coming, I think WASA is going to be a brighter city.
We'll take questions from the audience in just a few minutes, but Eric Yankee, it's been a year now. What are you most proud of accomplishing?
Oh boy, most proud of. So we have helped over 160 refugees through our office, and we feel like we survived it. So we're proud of that. But I think what we're most proud of is this may sound funny. When you meet somebody for the first time, whether it's at Central Wisconsin Airport or you meet them in the office and they've just come to the United States and they are in front of you and they are now here, I'm most proud of that moment, and that moment 160 times over this last year for our people and the people who've worked in volunteers. We can talk about this in abstractions and we can talk about this in numbers, but when you are face to face with this other human being who is just a lovely person and hardworking and is here, that's the proudest moment I think we all experience, and we get to experience it whenever a new family and individual comes.
And Eric Anderson, I want to ask you really the same question when you look back over the last year. What stands out to you as what's a success?
As I thought about that, I think some of the successes that we've seen in growth of some of the kids has really been remarkable. The first family that we were involved in is a family of 8 with 6 kids, ranging from 3 years old to 16. And every one of those kids has made remarkable advances over the last 13 months. One of them spoke English when they came here. Now all 5 of them are just going to town, getting involved in all kinds of stuff. In school, in sports in school, and so the advances that the kids have made have really been exciting, rewarding, and pretty remarkable.
What are you looking forward to in the coming year?
I think more of the same. We got a lot of new folks coming, and now folks coming from other countries. The first wave, a lot of the folks came from Afghanistan, given the crisis of the exodus there. But that's broadening out a lot, and we have folks coming from several African nations, from Ukraine, from Syria, and each one of those is a unique individual coming with a unique background, and I think will bring us a whole new set of opportunities.
Thank you very much. We want to open it up now for members of our audience. If you have questions for our guests today, please raise your hand. We have folks walking around with microphones for you to speak into. If you do need a translator, just let us know. We can translate your question as well. So we have a question back here.
I'd like to know how are the mental health needs of the new refugees being addressed? Because the needs of American citizens that are here already are so great. Are there enough services to go around? And with the cultural differences, how is that being addressed?
As I mentioned earlier, you can imagine how stressful it is to move across the country and be displaced from not only your daily life, but your extended family. The Bridge Clinic has been a great key point in accessing some of that. They do have a social worker who has been available, and they've been involved in some situations. We have access through North Central. They're expanding some telehealth services through mental health. But we have had some real instances where we needed somebody to intervene and to give us some help. And Bridge Clinic stood up and stepped forward and has been involved in getting people connected. So mental health is an issue for the community as a whole. There's a lot of need, but we've had good support so far.
And Francisco, you talked a little bit about how hard it is to go to a hospital and have this huge bill. What about going to a mental health professional?
In the case of the Hispanic community, it's a little more challenging because in the community itself, it's almost a little bit of a taboo. But then without having insurance, without knowing where to go, it's even more difficult. And sometimes the language barrier also put another layer. If the counselor is English speaker, then you need an interpreter, which makes that conversation a little more difficult. And also the lack of understanding how counseling works. Most of the time, some Hispanic families think that 1-2 sessions and that's it, when it's actually a work that requires more time. So the big challenge is the lack of insurance and the lack of counselors that can speak their language to provide the services they need.
That this is a very active discussion across the nation, and folks and organizations involved in refugee resettlement. And as you can imagine, the cultural barriers and hurdles are unique and they're large. And so we are actively a part of the sort of national networks that are trying to bring together resources, particularly for refugees, immigrants facing mental health challenges. We are fortunate that in addition to having a state refugee coordinator, we also have a state refugee health coordinator. And that person also helps to plug us into resources across the state. So I think, as we know, it's generally a phenomenon where behavioral health and the challenges of that is something large for our communities generally. We're trying to address the unique challenges that are faced by immigrant community as well.
Thank you. More questions? Do we have time for more questions? What would you like to know? We have one here in the front.
This question is for Emmanuel. Emmanuel, where do you see yourself in 3, 4, 5 years? What are your goals? Where do you see yourself?
Great question.
Thank you. As I begin new life, I can see like a future ahead of me because of I didn't realize that life it's how it feels like because of back there we have been like isolated but now I can work Yeah, I can pay some bills. So I feel like a normal human being now. I can say in the future, I can be like how other people live. Thank you.
What other questions do we have from the audience?
And we have an online question actually. This is from Mary. What American foods do people most enjoy and what not so much? So Emmanuel, you might want to answer this. Are there American foods you like and which ones don't you like?
Thank you. Oh, I find like a lot of kind of foods here. So if you go this side, you find another food. You go another place, find another food. I say, oh my God. I don't know how to call the names of the food, but you have so nice food. Like when you go in the restaurant, you okay. I've been tasting like kind of food, and you know how to cook. You cook nice. I like your dishes. So I still eating my original food because of I cook myself. I don't know how to make your food you eat. I wish I could because of you eat so nice food. Yeah. So I hope in the future I will learn how to make like a original food you do here. Because of if I go in the restaurant, like a Spanish restaurant, I find kind of food like and they go in the other restaurant, say my goodness, this is so nice. So I wish I could know how to dish like how to make the food, but I still like eat our original food, like cassava meal, like we have different food like rice, pasta. That's easy to make for me. But I wish I would know how to make your original food you do here. But maybe you have like a thousand of kind of food I like. Yeah. So I wish in the future, someone can teach me how to do that. Thank you.
I think we had a question here in the...
A question, but I know Emmanuel, and I think everybody would love to hear his story. If you could just tell your story, what happened when you were 6 years old, Emmanuel, and how you ended up going from Burundi to Congo to Zambia. So if you could just, I think people would really love to hear your story. So just, if you could just do it in a little short time.
Oh, thank you so much.
Definitely, yes.
Oh, my story is long, like liver WhatsApp. I mean, because of since in the beginning, I find myself I was a young little boy. Yeah, I became a refugee. It wasn't my choice. I was just a little boy. My parents killed. In Burundi, my father was a lawyer. I just came from school. With my siblings, we find at home people was gathered crying. So I don't. Okay, it's how it is. But sometimes I don't need to repeat that because of bring bad emotions. So some people told us that your parents killed. Some group of people came and killed my parents both. So that's when we some good neighbors, they say you don't have to be here because of those people. They have been targeting also you. So they help us to escape to go in Congo. When I was born, it's like a neighboring with Congo. We've been there in Congo and camp refugees, some years there. Also war find us in Congo. At that time, Congo was peaceful. So I ran and we started also, it was like a war started in the camp where we were, and they banned all the camp, more people died, but we survived. We came until I reached Zambia. It's not easy. It was like a couple of 2 years in the bush, mountain, Congo, running different locations. So until we reached in Zambia, that's when it was peaceful for us. So I was 9 that time. That's when I grew up in Zambia. Until today, I am here in Niwasa, in short. Because of my story, it's so long. We can talk 4 hours, 3 hours, if I want to get in details for everything. Yeah, it's a long story. Yeah, thank you, madam. He's one of women who usually helped me, received me. I'm free to enter his house. Yeah, I enjoy to be with her. Thank you, madam.
Thank you. Other questions? We have a little bit of time left. If you have a question, now would be the time to raise your hand. Anyone? No? Oh, one back here.
Oh, sorry. So you talked about transportation as being one of the big issues that you have in this area. What kinds of ideas or things do you work on to help alleviate that? Are there groups of retired old people like me that could on occasion be willing or able to drive people around and help out that way? The image of you riding your bike at 4 o'clock in the morning in the snow that we have here, my esteem for you has risen, because I would have just stayed in bed, but and I do. But I'm a retired elementary teacher. And I remember having in the early days of my coming here to the Wausau community, as our Hmong population started growing, having students in that spoke very little English or none at all, and the support that they were given. A Spanish family that moved up here, and the boy that I had in 5th grade at the time spoke no English, but by the time he was done with that year, and nothing magical that I was doing, his English was just, it was fabulous. He kind of became the interpreter for the family. But what programs then are you doing to help these families? I know you've got some things through NTC. Do you work with the school districts in this area too? I've just asked 2 questions, I'm sorry. So
that's okay. Who would be best to?
I would say, as part of one of the sponsor groups, that there's plenty of opportunity for transportation drivers. Our group, we had a group of probably 10 people, and some people were retired, and they said, okay, I can drive, I can be available. And they built their own sort of little phone connection network to say who's available to drive on such and such a day. And we had talked about broadening that out. If they had a listserv, a text list or email list of other people willing to drive, contacting the ECDC office, whether they're fully a part of a sponsor group or can help out driving, there's opportunity for those people to plug in.
You are interested in helping driving, which is always a need. Let's talk afterwards and get your information. We do create lists, and the way we tend to work them is we like to get folks very specifically, if you can drive, what's your availability? We're looking for, if it's a little bit, that's great. If it's a lot, that's great too. Where you're living, so that we can plug it in with our case managers, so that they know, okay, here's a list of drivers, and they can call and kind of work down the line to see who's available, say this Tuesday afternoon, to help this family get to an appointment at Bridge Clinic. So yeah, if there's anybody out there who's interested in helping, transportation is always a need. And so we're looking for drivers, and really glad to have them. So the more the merrier. Getting to part of your first question too, we are constantly working in the office on developing relationships with employers, with local organizations, to try to come up with more options to create ride sharing, carpooling options, anything we can do, and we're looking for more opportunities to do that. It's obviously a need, for the entirety of our low-income populations in Wausau and Point and elsewhere. But what we can do is we can try to work on at least building out some opportunities where, I would love to see, for instance, more opportunities for workers with employers to kind of create carpool and rideshare opportunities as one way of addressing this. So we're open and we're looking for more ideas. But right now, getting volunteers who can do some driving is great.
That's a great question. Thank you. We have time for one more question. Do I see a hand? I think we probably have time for two. So, yep, we'll take you and then we'll go to the back next.
This is for you, Eric. Do you have the opportunity and have you been asked to speak to service clubs and other groups? I mean, this is a tiny group here, and I'm a little embarrassed about it. But anyway, so that this message can, as far as drivers and people who can speak, teach English, do you have those opportunities and do you have time to do that?
Yeah, I see that as one of my key jobs is to get out and to talk to civic organizations, faith communities, any group that wants me to come and talk, I'm glad to come talk to them. But I do need invitations. And so I've made certain rounds via emails, but I'm looking for more invitations to come and talk to various groups and just keep them updated. So even if you're part of a group that maybe we spoke to a year ago or 6 months ago, I'm more than happy to come back. I've done a couple of talks at the Landing, for instance. I want to come back and do some more and talk to various church groups because it is moving and it is changing. And this is a way for me to reach out and talk with groups to let them know like what our needs are right now. So glad to do that. So let me know. Please invite me.
And our final question in the back.
Thank you all for your presenting. I guess, what is there one thing that just the general public, just one thing that we can do to kind of support the reaching out to, whether it's refugees, to other new neighbors, to help their improve their experience, to help meet a need? Is there if you just sort of identify one thing that we can be doing, what would that be?
Eric. Yankee, I'm going to ask you to start.
Yes, I'll start. If you can volunteer, volunteer. Because I think that getting back to Eric Anderson's point about relationships, this is about relationship building and building out our community. So if you can spend a few hours in any way, that'd probably be the first thing. I can think of lots of others, but I'll stop with that one.
Eric Anderson, what would you say?
New in the community, look for the opportunity to show them something unique about our community. We have fish fry. We have, this is what we do in Wausau. Let me take you along. And that's how we share our culture with them. They share our culture with us. So look for ways to brag about Wausau and show them that.
Francisco, I'm asking you next. So
Yeah.
What do you recommend?
Be kind. Be kind. And now we have this new community campus. It's going to be a focus for a lot of the people that we help, and they're going to need a lot of help also. So volunteer there.
Finally, Nasaya, I'm going to ask you as well. What's one thing that we can do to become an advocate, to be more supportive?
Oh my goodness, I think all the guys have touched on all of it. The main thing is relationship, as a Hmong immigrant, kind of thinking back from my first day that I came to the United States, I think the biggest impression is the neighborly love. Because, if you happen to be one of those who have a new neighbor that are from a different country, don't be afraid to go out and say hi, because they are so shy. Trust me on that. As an immigrant, when I came to the state, I have no clue how to speak the language. I may have known other languages, but I didn't know English. So it was so hard to even say hi. So it was frightening because, I have never seen a white person before. And, I don't want to be I don't want to be politically anywhere with that, but, just for the purpose of identifying. I live in a country where everybody looks like me. And so when I came to the States, it was very different. And especially when I landed in Denver, Colorado, there was a lot of Black Americans. I didn't know that people came that dark. and then of course my next door neighbors were white Americans, and I didn't realize people came that light either. And so, you know, people, I think like Francisco had said, be kind. That's the most important thing, is being kind. And just reaching out and say, hey, do you need help with something? Or, you know, like if this is their first winter, hey, do you need help shoveling? I can show you how to shovel snow, or I can show you how to use a snowblower. And eventually one thing connects to another and you build that relationship. And again, you know, like I said, these guys had touched on every one of them already. And I'm just alliterating.
Well, before we close, Emmanuel, I want to ask your point of view. What is the one thing that we could have done better? What could we do differently to have made your journey here easier?
Yeah, as we came here, some of us, you know, we don't know how to speak in English. More people, they don't know how to speak English. Also, as they said, transportation is still an issue for us. Yeah, there's some areas which we cannot reach because of transportation. So we still need friends. We still need people who can comfort us and remove fear in us. You know? We have to be free, and we need more people who can teach us to culture and how we're supposed to be. Some of our culture and culture of here is maybe different, but we need people, we need friends who can try to remove fear in us, and who can learn from them. We can learn from them step by step. I hope in the future, things will be easy for us through those people. Yeah, we need friends, we need people because of you know, in our culture back there, we usually when you have your neighbor, you can knock at the door of your neighbor, as I said, and you can ask, so my neighbor, do you have a sword? You can ask in Africa, it's how it is. You can go to your neighbor and you say, oh, my neighbor, do you have a charcoal? We use charcoal in Africa. So it's easy. So we need people like that. We need people who can helping us to feel free. Yeah, it's because of the issue of English, issue of language is still a barrier for us. You can see like this person doesn't need to talk, but because of language, so we need people who can remove fear in us so that it can be free like how it's supposed to be.
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. We're so glad you're here. And I want to thank all of you on stage for the efforts that you have made in making this community such a better place. Thank you so much.
And we'd really like to thank our 4 interpreters who've been working hard behind the scenes all night. So Tony, Nabil, Patrick, and Mati, thank you so much for your work tonight. And then, of course, last but not least, we'd like to thank Chris Berg, who's our theater manager, and Julie Bunchek, who pretty much organized the entire event, including all the words that I'm speaking to you tonight. And last but not least, we really appreciate Shereen Siewert, our moderator. Thank you, Shereen. Thank you. My pleasure. And one last round of applause for our panelists. Thank you.